I'm sure they will, sort of thing. As you know, I've got to sort of nip off this call. As you know, Keith, I've got a call to. We've got lots of partnerships with an Indian university going forward, which will be quite interesting, sort of thing. So we're just going through a call this morning just to sort of discuss going forward what will be happening. That'd be really exciting for our sort of our clients and students and graduates as well. So there you go. But that's great. I'm sure, as I say, Maria and Kelp, I'm sure they'll get stuck in, and I'm sure that all of the material will be good as ever, Keith. And I'll leave you in the capable hands of the lovely Janine, if I may.
You absolutely may. Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care, Keith.
Thank you very much, Rich, for the opportunity.
All the best, everyone.
Cheers, Rich.
Cheers.
Thank you. Listen, let me just ask before I get into the meat and potatoes of this, Maria and Kalp, if you're able to enter into the chat, whether you're comfortable sort of getting involved in a conversation, just let me know, because I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable or embarrass anyone during the course of this. I'll just open the. I'm not known for my multitasking skills, but I will endeavour to keep actually we might have some feline assistance at some point.
We have got feline assistance.
Fantastic. Okay. That's what's so fantastic about working remotely, is just the humanity aspect. I find that really, really, really encouraging. Okay, here we go then. So I'm going to go to a shared screen just now. Janine, just give me a thumbs up if that comes across okay.
I can see your desktop. Is that what we're supposed to see?
No. So, but I'm glad I asked. Right, hang on a second. Let's go.
I always have this problem because I've always got too many windows active.
Yeah, that is the considering I sold this stuff for 30 odd years, I still should know how
exactly the same. I mean, I used to do a lot of this in my previous role, and it's sort of almost, you think you know exactly where you're going when you do the screen share, and you inevitably pick the wrong miniature window.
yeah, absolutely right. So slideshow, let's go there from beginning. There we go.
And as we go through, I can keep an eye on the chat, so don't worry about it.
Okay, that's kind of you. Thank you very much. And also what I found last time was that because you've got quite an international constituent base, you know, student base, member base, etc., some people came in a little bit later on, not realizing, and our clocks went forward last weekend, and that might have well, it certainly confused me, and I live here. So,
yeah, it confused me. I remembered on Saturday night and then forgot on Sunday morning, which was, thankfully it was Sunday morning, not Monday morning. So
yes, indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, right. How are we doing now? We should be should be just about on the screen. Okay, fantastic. All right. So influence then. So I went on to my normal source of images that I use for presentations like this and put in influence. I'm always interested to see what someone else's algorithm says when I search for influence, and this is one of the first images that came out of the box, so to speak, and I just thought this is really a pictorial representation of our current times.
It's really powerful image, isn't it? It's like, yeah, that's exactly how it works.
It does kind of feel, oh, Denny's here, good, okay, and it does kind of feel like well, that is a scene actually that could come from pretty much any city in the world, whether it's a developing nation or whether it's what we call an advanced economy, is that the proliferation of smartphones, cell phones, whatever you call them, and our sort of fixation with what's going on in the world around us. Welcome, Dumi, by the way. And this is absolutely a pictorial representation of what's going on and influencing in our lives just now. And Dummy, welcome to the call. If you want to get involved, you want to come off of mute, say something, give me your opinion. That's one thing I really am looking for this morning. That would be really, really helpful. So in a nutshell, just in the chat box, it would be really helpful if you're up for this to how did you hear about this event? Was it on LinkedIn? Was it on Eventbrite, or was it the BCU, the incubator site? That would be really helpful if you don't mind. Whether you're a student, staff, or a local business person, and what comes to mind when you think about influence? What does it mean to you? I think influence is something we experience on a very personal sort of basis, and everyone will have their own opinions. Just while you're thinking about that, I've been involved in influencing, which is actually sales, but that is influencing by any other name, for 30 odd years, and I've really enjoyed the whole process of influencing and trying to bring about by fair means the particular outcomes that my employers ask me to and clients ask me to bring about. And I've worked on all kinds of opportunities, deals, if you like. And Maria, hi, welcome. You're technology, I know that. I worked on all kinds of deals, from helping companies sell their gym memberships at £45 a month, which you might call a high volume, lower cost sort of sale, right up to an IT outsourcing contract worth over $1 billion. And the principles of sales or influencing are actually pretty much the same, no matter what the size of outcome that you're hoping to achieve. The principles of sales, and I'll be going into that in a little bit more detail as we kind of move on. Anyway, I'm a sales trainer and LinkedIn training just now, and I'm really passionate about working with universities, particularly in the West Midlands, where up until fairly recently I was based in just influencing there you go, there's that word, influencing the whole agenda. Okay, brilliant. So what we're covering today is we'll do some introductions. Maria, Be Seen, excellent. That is a fantastic program. Thank you for that. We've done the introductions. I'll give you a definition of what I think influence actually is. What can we realistically influence? And we'll be talking about that. And I think that's really important, particularly with the pandemic, about what we can influence. I'll leave. We'll get some specific advice from Captain Jack Sparrow, if that's a character if that's a character that you recognise. We'll look at some influencing skills, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we'll see a blinding example of influence at play, which I hope will be a bit of a masterclass, and we'll be able to unpack that. And then we'll have a session wrap up and close. Most important thing, however, is not necessarily this material. It's the ideas or thoughts that are generated by people viewing this, whether it's live right now or whether it's online if you're streaming this a little bit later on. It's the thoughts and ideas and concepts that capture your imagination as we kind of move forward. And I'd be interested in hearing more about what your thoughts as we kind of go forward. So can I just ask you, in the chat, which seems to be working for everyone at the minute, how do you relate to influence? How would you, I'm going to come off of share now. How do you define influence? I'm really interested in.
I don't know. When it first came up, I was like, how would I define influence? That's why I've not actually I'm not responded, because I don't think I should. It's because I don't know how to. Because
it's really massive, isn't it?
It's because it's everything. It's decision making. It isn't just a sales and promotion thing. It's what you wear, what you eat, where you go, who you're friends with. It is a lot bigger than just a 1-word, 2-word definition.
It is absolutely. So I certainly get that. And okay, so if you look up, and obviously I cheated in advance, went to the Oxford English Dictionary to see what they had to say about it. And it's the definition of influence is the capacity or power of persons or things to be a compelling force on or produce effects on the actions, behavior, opinions, etc. of others. Now that's a bit of a
quite a mouthful, isn't it?
Quite a mouthful,
but it does tick all the boxes, doesn't it? It does, and power is a really strong word as well.
It's a bit of a catch-all, and an example of what they're talking about there might be he used his family influence to get the contracts, let's say. Now that's a topic of great discussion at ministerial level just at the minute, and actually but a great example of how to use the word influence. Now another definition that they came up with, and I'm reading verbatim to make sure I get it accurate, is the action or process of producing effects on the actions, behavior, opinions, etc. of another or others, which is even bigger mouthful for me. But for an example, we've just had Mother's Day. Her mother's influence made her stay. So that's the influence of something on self, and then influence on outcomes to get the contracts that we talked about previously. So influence has a number of different contexts, but we are all under the influence, literally, of many, many things. And I think understanding this subject might give us a chance to sort of unpack what's going on in all of our lives, and maybe even, especially as we're still in pandemic, still in lockdown, although if you look at the news, you wouldn't believe it, give us a chance to actually exercise what am I going to allow to influence me and what am I not going to allow to influence me kind of going forward. Right, I'm just going to go back onto shared screen again, because I do want you to get this. This is now, hopefully you can see a chart here.
Yeah. This is Demi's put her definition of what she thinks influence is, and she thinks of social media and influencers. But she also put, when she thinks about what influence is, it's about how things have an impact on who we are and what we think.
It's like you've read my slides, Demi. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, hopefully, this chart is going to come out, but this is, now I am on Instagram, but I'm more of a consumer than, shall we say, an influencer, and I'm certainly nowhere near these guys. But I just had a look at who are the most followed Instagrammers over the last, say, 5 years or so, and Selena Gomez is up there at 135 million followers, and even the person in 8th position, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, as most of us will probably known for, is over 100 million, 103 million. Now, I'm a big movie fan. I actually looked at Dwayne Johnson is a really interesting example. If you go on IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, and look at the movies that Dwayne Johnson has starred in, they're not normally 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 is like The Godfather, some really, really powerful type stuff. Dwayne Johnson stars in movies that are generally between 5.5 and 6.5, which means they're just, well, you would argue, they're not necessarily fantastic movies in terms of art, direction, script, or anything else, but he has such a following around the world, both on Instagram, in movies. He's a big box office draw. So the return on investment that movie producers get from Dwayne Johnson appearing, and actually, case in point, he earned more money last year in lockdown than any other actor or actress did in Hollywood, and his movies frankly, are not that brilliant, but they are exciting. People go, so they spend money in cinema, or they'll stream it on Amazon, which is one of the limitations that we have at the moment. That's kind of the point. And just while we're on here, let's go down to historical. So hopefully these are these names coming up clear enough on your screen?
They are, yeah.
Okay, right. So top 25 historical names. I thought was interesting. The top 25 is just there in front of you. And Nikola Tesla cars are the car of the moment with Elon Musk, etc. But Tesla is the physics genius that that we believe is one of the top influencing people in history. Here's the other thing from that list: influence isn't always for good. And so one of the other names, which I'm not going to call out, one of the other names on there, probably no surprises, but it's there, and as a somber reminder that not all influence is for good. And then Jesus Christ makes it up the top of the list, and possibly no surprises there either. Now, we've just had International Women's Day a few weeks back, so I thought it was highly relevant to not just do, let's have a look at top women of influence. And this is, I think, a much more contemporary, much more interesting list. Excuse me. We've got Malala Yousafzai, which I'm sure people will know, former Afghanistan school child, was shot on her way to being educated at school, and is now at Oxford studying humanities, I think, has become a real champion of girls in particular, but female rights around the world, in particular as it relates to education. We've got Jessica Ennis-Hill, which everyone may not know, but really caused a storm in the 2012 London Olympics for Team GB, and really did fantastically well. J.K. Rowling, of course, the author of the Harry Potter books. And it seems like just yesterday, Janine, I don't know if you can relate to this, but my eldest, who's Michael, who's 25 and 6'5", and I have to say to him, Michael, can you stop doing that now, please? If you can relate to that. But anyway, and that's influence. But I still remember when he was 6 or 7 years old, reading on Sunday night one of the Harry Potter books. And I eventually mastered the art of reading out something at the top of the page, but scanning with my other eye or another bit of the brain what was coming a couple of paragraphs later. Actually, some of it is quite dark.
Yeah, some of it. My daughter's 23, and I did exactly the same. The same.
And you start reading about the Dementors, and I'm thinking, I want that? Because some of it is just a little bit uncomfortable to read.
Yeah, Prisoner of Azkaban does not make good bedtime reading, does it? When you're 9 years old. No.
but it's another example of okay, Maria, you're making me feel old now. Thank you very much. So Maria's written in, I'm the same age as yours. I still read Harry Potter before bed. Now,
I love Harry Potter. I've still got all the books, and I have reread them a couple of times. It's super escapism, isn't it? It's
absolutely, and I believe J.K. Rowling was responsible for getting the nation reading again, because we were really struggling with book sales, with people reading, with literacy levels at all. And it takes someone like J.K. Rowling, who wrote those books when she was a single mother, in a coffee shop or a bedsit, really struggling, and wrote those books, had this idea about a boy wizard, and it gets much darker when you really read it. I bet it does. I might go back and try that for myself. But you talk about influence, and that's one that I can personally experience the influence of J.K. Rowling on me and my children as well. Oprah Winfrey, been in, probably needs no introduction, but probably one of the biggest media personalities of modern history, actually, and certainly of contemporary Black American history. And just on the interview, of course. So isn't it amazing the amount of influence that's going on all around us? We probably don't give it another thought until we have engagements or encounters like this. Okay, right. I've kind of done that one of this. I'll come off a share, hopefully. Well, I'm sorry I'm on the big screen, but you can't really help that. Anyway, now, Maria wrote something before that. I just want to check that I'm... So what she said, I think influence is such a relevant topic right now, about dependency on social media, internet research, the news, good point. I'll come to that in a second. It feels like it's become increasingly skewed. So over the course of the pandemic as well, because we don't have our usual level of face-to-face interaction. And here we are a week away probably from getting that, actually, but I think many people have jumped the gun and are out there, and we saw the news reports over the last 24-48 hours of people in fields, and I have to say, and without wishing to appear patronizing, it is the younger people I really feel for, students, whether at school or at university, undergrads in particular, that you probably feel like, and this is influence, that you've had your freedoms, your reasonable expectation of freedoms curtailed. Whereas, Janine, about you, but when lockdown first happened, and it was like stay at home, it was don't go out unless don't go to the office unless you really have to. And I thought, I might have actually been living like that for 2 or 3 years already.
Yeah.
So one person's restrictions is another person's preference, and that's kind of what makes the
I'd only just ventured back into the real working world, because I'd worked in a remote role in a national job for 10 years. So I'd been working in my shed in my back garden, my wooden office, and then going out into a real world situation probably 3-4 times a month. And I'd been at BCU for 5 months before lockdown, so I'd just readjusted to, wow, I like this feeling of seeing the same people every day and catching up over coffee, and then it was just curtailed.
And all of that was on hold for a while. We'll see what happens, because there's now as hard to predict as the future, as somebody
absolutely
really clever once said. But the feeling, and I read some comments from a guy called Alan Jope, who's the CEO of Unilever. Unilever, of course, one of the world's biggest manufacturing and brands, and make Ben and Jerry's, and that's why they're so important to me. He said he thinks the days of slavishly going to the office 5 days a week is pretty much over. He thinks there'll be a hybrid. Maybe you do 2 days a week in the office, 3 remotely, which I think he means at home, but we don't want to restrict people. They might work out of a coffee shop and actually, do you know what, on the human interaction, we talk about influence, Janine, and Maria and Demi as well on the line, don't want to leave you guys out, is that even before the pandemic, and I've worked from home for 3-4 years. I do most of my coaching online anyway, but sometimes if I was working on a document, a proposal or something for a client, I actually used to go to a coffee shop and sit down. This kind of sounds sad when you say it out loud, but actually, I
know exactly where you're going, because I've done it.
I don't think I was alone in doing this. Is that I used to sit down. I wouldn't talk to anyone, but I would write. I would sort of conceptualize and write on my papers, but just to hear other human chatter.
It's just that background chatter. And when you do look up the number of other people that are doing exactly the same with notebooks and laptops or tablets, and they're in and not speaking to anybody, working in isolation, but just that sense of being with other humans, it does change the way that you feel about what you're working on as well.
I truly think so, and that's kind of important for what influences us, but what are our personal needs from society? And this is a bit philosophical. Maybe it's certainly deep for me, as being a simple soul. But actually, it's just reminded us that we cannot survive forever locked away in our offices or remote locations at home. We do, on some level, need some degree
of... There is a need for the human interaction. And I'm really glad, Maria, that it's not just us old people that do that. Maria's put in the chat that she used to do it all the time as well.
Okay, I'm glad. Well, Maria,
Yeah.
I am glad I'm not the only one. That is absolutely for sure. So, what can I do now? I would like now. No surprise to see what influence you have in your life. Fantastic. Okay, so I would like to ask, especially if you're using chat at the minute, and Janine, we'll talk about this as well, is where do you get your news from? What are the sources of your news? Are there particular websites that you depend on, or are there television programs, or what's your source of the world news? I'm kind of interested in that.
I try to avoid it, I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
Sky Sports, I get a lot of my news from.
Yeah. Are you a sports fan? Is that why you
I
love
sports?
Okay, right,
Yeah.
I'm an armchair.
Strange woman.
What, sorry?
A proper strange woman. Love football. Football in lockdown has been absolutely amazing. Although it's strange not being able to have a crowd at the game, you can see football like 24/7 if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also we talk about influence. I wonder if anyone's, I'm sure there's going to be some research done on the performance of footballers without an audience as opposed to with a capacity crowd in the stadium. Because we talk sometimes, football is very partisan, as you know. I'm a Chelsea fan. I've been for.
Sticks case of me.
There you go. But it's such a tribal thing. But and I'm really pleased to see women's football coming on really strong.
Yeah, I love the women's game. I think it's just so much more honest, for want of a better word.
Yeah, it's been kept purer.
Yeah.
And long may that continue.
Yeah. And you can certainly see the influence of the crowd where you've got the show-off players. Like Ian Wright said on the Match of the Day podcast ages ago that he knows he would really struggle because part of his performance was working to the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you remember Gladiator, where Oliver Reed talks to Russell Crowe's character? He says, what does he say? So you don't have to be the best, he said, but win the crowd and you'll win your freedom. And so the influence of the crowd on the emperor, on the football player, that's quite prophetic. I might steal that and use it again. But anyway, but he talks about winning the crowd, and influence is about winning the crowd. Now it might be a crowd of one, or it might be a crowd of many, but influence is about your ability to win the crowd. So saying social media, maybe Instagram.
Are you reading Demi's comment? Yeah, and Maria asked if it's okay if she unmutes, which is absolutely fine. Maria, please join in.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you. No.
Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely fine.
Sorry, I'm just really struggling to type because I'm walking. I'm so sorry. It's just that I'm typing really, really slowly, and then you've already moved on to something else, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to type that now. So,
well, as long as you're safe, Maria.
I am, yes.
You're not crossing the road or something like that. Okay, right.
So, so you asked where do we get our information and news, etc. So basically what I do, I agree with Janine about the fact that it's such a well, it's a delicate balance between wanting to stay informed, but not wanting the news to take over your life. Because at the moment, it's actually one of the things that I've done over the course of the week. I always watch BBC Breakfast first thing in the morning when I have my breakfast. I've tracked, so within the first 10 seconds that I turn it on, how many days I hear the words COVID or coronavirus or vaccine or, COVID related things. And it's every day within the first 10 seconds. But that's my main sort of news intake for about half an hour when I have my breakfast in the morning. And if there is anything really interesting that I want to know more about, I do sort of a deep dive. And also, like Demi said, I am on social media quite a lot, but as an observer, I don't post very much. I just, I look at what other people are sharing. And then I sometimes fact check it because I don't think it looks right But anyway, that's mainly what I do.
That's really kind. Maria, do you mind if I ask why you just consume social media rather than post? Do you mind if I ask you that?
I think so. I have this massive anxiety surrounding social media, because I think when people post something on social media, whatever it is, you might be sharing something else, you are always looking for a reaction. And that gives me so much anxiety because as a performer, I'm, my whole life is about, presenting myself as a singer and, out there to be judged. But that part of me is actually very, very vulnerable, even though that's sort of my profession. I do have this really big anxiety surrounding social media, about, how people are going to react to what I say, what I do. But also there's another reason, the cancel culture that's increasingly, toxic. I'm just very scared of, saying something that some people might not like, and then for that to spiral completely out of control, as so many people have experienced, not
so
just famous people.
To snowball, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, and then you have to deal with the aftermath of that for months to come.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, right. That's some pretty big stuff there. Thank you very much for your candor, by the way, Maria. Thank you. But the courage that it must take. I think I picked up that you were a singer there, but the courage. That's the big differentiator between you and I, Maria, is that I actually think I can sing. Mrs. Rose will tell you I can't, but you actually can sing. That's an amazing gift, and I take my hat off to you for that. Demi, you're very welcome. Demi, you're welcome to come in if you'd like to. So. A couple of things that happen there for me, where people get their news from, is that if we're not careful, the content that we consume, if we're not careful, it can all be quite skewed, quite biased. And if you read the same old stuff all the time, then you're going to be brainwashing yourself into a particular kind of opinion. And nowhere is this truer than in someone's Twitter feed, where if you're I'm not even going to call anything out because it's going to skew the conversation. But if you read everyone that's, I don't know, left of centre on politics, then sure enough, you're just going to be reinforcing your own views. Whereas if you read a balance, and I'd like to say sensible balance, but that's a very subjective thing, of news feed, then you can get informed debate from both sides of the argument, and I think that leads to a better society. But those are the degrees of influence on all of us. So thank you very much for that, Maria. Really appreciate that. There's also the term, I don't know if you've come across that, of an echo chamber. Now, you often get this in leadership positions with CEOs of companies or senior managers in companies who surround themselves with yes people. So no one ever disagrees with the leader. Everyone only agrees because careers are dependent on it and all the rest of it. Whereas really, should we say, mature and confident leaders that believe they're doing the right things will surround themselves with people that are prepared to speak truth unto power, so to speak. I have to say, in my experience, we need many more of those, certainly in British industry. And although that's a really good thing, and everyone would probably argue it's a really good thing, what happens in practice can often feel very, very different. Okay, but those are the things that are influencing us, and the point is that they're coming at us from all angles. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. Right, so there are lots of external influences. We talked about the news, but I'm just going to go through a couple of things that, and some of this is pretty close to home, and I don't apologize for that. That's what I'm here for. So when we grow up, it is said that by the time we're 4 years old, our characters are pretty much fully formed because of our early childhood experience. And I'm not a pediatrician, but because of our early childhood experiences. And still now, and my mum said I was 3 when this happened. It's my earliest childhood memory is that my mum was in the sitting room. We had a neighbour come round unexpectedly for a cup of tea. And my mum was in the middle of something at the time, went to sit down with a neighbour and they're having a nice chat. And I was 3 years old, I was doing my thing, doing what 3-year-olds do. And the iron had been left on. And I, being a sort of naturally curious 3-year-old, I looked up and wondered what that is. And I got the full force and effect of the heat that came out of that iron. And now, here I am 53 years later, but I would add that I'm really conscious about the iron being left on or burnt, or the hob or something. There we go, we've got Jasmine coming in, okay. Or the hob that we've got on where you may not see a flame, but it's still sort of burning hot. I'm really, really conscious of that. And that's because of my early childhood influences that are going on. Welcome, Jasmine, to the call. Jasmine, you're very welcome to get involved. Welcome to put your camera on or not, or put something in the chat box as we go through this, but you're very welcome on the call. So others close to us, our immediate family, mums, dads, guardians, they are all hugely influencing on us, particularly in our early years. And my eldest son, that one I was talked about, that is 25 now, as old as Maria, very kindly told me, same age as she is, so thank you for that. We say we bring our children up to be independent, and mine have gone the 4 corners of the earth and I hardly ever hear from them. So I'd like to think there was a balance of independence, but you know, I guess if that's the goal, then I've succeeded. So others that are influencing our lives a little bit further away from than our immediate family might be the lecturers in the university that we're attending. They might be the vice chancellor of the university, who's absolutely influencing our lives because of the curriculum, because of the way the university functions. That's why I'm really proud to be involved with BCU and the incubator, because of the way, because of the culture and the spirit of the organization, which really lives out its values. And that for me, that for me is really, really important now that I'm exercising a choice on who I choose to work with or not, as the case may be. or Kim Kardashian, Selena Gomez, all these people, they're all don't influence me necessarily, but they influence those around me, my children, and therefore maybe they do influence me as well, even though not directly through people, other people close to me. Some other influences, just to finish this bit of the conversation off, would be some abstract influences, gravity, for instance. Now you might say, well, how does gravity influence us? Well, you know,
it's not one I'd have come up with if you said, give me a list of the things that influence you the most, gravity, but it does.
Of course, just got to fall off the chair and find out how gravity is influencing you. Pain, I talked about touching that iron when I was 3 years old. I still jolt when I think of that memory because I still sort of feel that pain, if you see the shock it was on my sort of self, on my system. So it can be an emotional or a physical sort of pain, but these are all influences. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, brilliant. What else have we got? We have got right, yeah, I'm going to go on a shared screen again for this one, but I'm going to use the big screen, so hopefully you can see this, even if you're on a smaller screen yourselves. Let's see. Okay, right. So here is now. I don't know if anyone's read a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by a chap called Stephen R. Covey, C-O-V-E-Y. Now, it was written some time ago, probably 30 years. And let's just very briefly, there are not many new inventions or new ideas in the world these days. We talk about Tesla. Tesla cars are not a new invention. They're just a different way of delivering the car. Elon Musk has not invented the battery. He might have assembled it in a different way using different materials, but it's actually not a new invention. I just want to get that point across. Highly influential, absolutely. So this is just repackaging of ideas that were probably been around since Socrates or Plato's time. This is a repackaging of ideas and a reimagining of how we interact with our world. So there are 3 concentric circles here on your screen. The center of the circle is the center of control. If you imagine we as ourselves are in the center of our control here, central circle, we can control everything that's going on in that circle. And then the very outside of that circle are circles of concern, stuff we're aware of that we know is going on, but we have zero control over. And then in the middle, which is the really interesting thing, I think, is stuff that's going on in the world or around us where we could have some influence, hence the circle of influence going on. Now, this is a big subject, but a really important one, I think. Now, can we, either through chat or if you want to come off mute, please do jump in here. But would anyone like to hazard give me some examples of what they think they're in complete control of?
Tumbleweed. Sometimes it feels like absolutely nothing.
Do you know what? That's a great answer. It's actually scarily small number. Okay, Carla's coming in. It's a scarily small number of the things that we are absolutely in full control of. And they're pretty basic. So morning for all those that have just joined the call. I think it was Jasmine that's just joined.
Jasmine and Carla have just joined.
Jasmine and Carla. Carla's name is on the bottom there. There we go. Okay, so the question was just asked, by the way, if you want to get involved, Jasmine and Carla, is if you can see the screen now, what do you think you might be fully in control of? And it's pretty basic stuff like, well, I got up at in time to have my breakfast and a cup of tea and start this on time. I was fully in control. I felt pretty much in control of being able to get here on time. Now, there have been times in my career, frankly, where even though I had control, I still couldn't turn up on time for whatever reason, because I was influenced, or I allowed other things to influence me, and I would end up late. And it's a really poor character trait to have. But let me not dwell on that. Anyway, so the examples of things that we are absolutely fully in control of is pretty much us and the way we respond to stuff. Dummy, I think we're fully in control of ourselves and our own actions, though these might be influenced by outside factors. Absolutely right on the money there, Dummy. Thank you very much.
I got on the wrong train, just to jump in. I got on the wrong train once at 7:30 in the morning, heading for Manchester, and ended up in Sheffield 15 minutes before my meeting started in Manchester. Yeah, that's quite a scary place to be, but it is. I was totally in control. I was totally on time because of the way New Street Station lines up its trains, one at each end of the platform. Yeah, and then everything is totally out of your control all of a sudden.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you go into Marks and Spencer and you've got one item to get and you find out they've moved the store around, and you're like, okay, well, where have they put the newspapers now, or whatever it happens to be. So all these things are coming to kind of influence ourselves. So, okay, so the point is, the stuff that we are in absolute control of, 100% control of, is actually remarkably small, and it's generally, as Dummy really, I'm going to steal that, Dummy, if you don't mind, fully in control of ourselves and our own actions. And I'm going to give you some advice from Captain Jack Sparrow in a few minutes' time to sort of exemplify that, if you like. Okay, let's have a look at circle of concern. So I'd be really interested if you could put into the chat box or come off of mute, and by all means speak out loud your what might be concerning you in the whole wide world just now. What are areas of concern that you have, and let's chat about those in a minute. For a minute, I beg your pardon. So would anyone like to put something in the chat box or come off of mute? Just give you a few seconds to decide if you want to do that. Here we go. So I'm going to go with, until someone else comes in with something, I'm going to go with COVID-19. Okay?
So I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah, we got.
But I was resisting doing, because it is the biggest concern, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the elephant in the room. But actually, do you know what? It's here to stay. I don't think I'm being controversial in saying that, but the vaccine is absolutely something that Jasmine, thank you very much.
I was going to do exactly the same. Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, well in that case, I'm really glad I mentioned it then. But COVID-19 is indiscriminate, actually. The one thing that has been really interesting, it's a really interesting time to be alive in world history right here, right now. For all the fantastic things that are going on in the world, COVID-19 has come along and affects absolutely everyone, rich or poor, black or white, Far East or in the West. It doesn't discriminate, it affects everyone. And it's and we can't do anything about that. And so we have zero control over the pandemic itself. We have some control over what we do about it. So we can choose to take a vaccine. I had my vaccine a couple of weeks ago. You've had yours too. Really pleased to hear that. And I don't know if I'm being completely outrageous now, but I would encourage anyone on the call right now or anyone viewing this to get your vaccine. Please do get your vaccine, or seek medical advice, certainly, and proper medical advice from the NHS. Maria,
Thanks, Ray.
thank you very much. I presume that was meant politely. So, okay, so, but you never can tell, but influential Maria as ever. Thank you for that. So, circle of concern is, would anyone like to mention, now we've got some engagement going, would anyone like to venture something else that is an area of concern to them? And if it's concerning you, then it's important to me as well, for the purposes of this course. So if there's anything that's going on that's concerning you, let's chat about that in just a minute. I'm just, Maria's come off of mute. Do you want to say something? Come on, Maria.
Yes, I was actually thinking, do you think the circle of concern and the circle of influence, they actually overlap?
Ooh, I think they can. I think
and also I think there are things that we can
influence your decisions. Is that what you're trying to say? I think I agree.
Yes, and also there is an element of control. I think in terms of the virus, we can't, do anything in terms of making this virus go away overnight. But I think ultimately it's actually down to every single one of us and how we, behave to actually make this pandemic go away faster, would you say?
I would absolutely say that. One of the phrases I've come to remember over the last few weeks is that no one's safe until everyone's safe.
Exactly, yeah.
And so if we all go about wearing masks at the right time, which I think is also here to stay, by the way, you're washing our hands more frequently. I don't know about you, but I tell you, when in the old world where we could do networking and meet lots of people, I'd be the first one going to the toilets to wash my hands after shaking hands with everyone. I'm just like that. So no offense to anyone, but that's what I do because I like hygiene. You're absolutely right, Maria. There are, but I have to have a context to think about that. And Carla may well have just given us one. There are overlaps, and that's where influence comes in. So Carla has written in the chat box, lack of funds to launch a business. Okay, now that is really topical. So what do you do about that? You can either stick in the purple circle in the very middle and go, well, I haven't got any funds, so I can't launch a business, so I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing, knowing that I can't launch funds. Or you can go to the middle and you can think about, well, okay, I know funds are available because I'm reading about it every day in the headlines, wherever you get your news from. So someone's got access to funds. How do I get access to funds? Now, Carla, are you, I would really welcome you coming into this conversation verbally if you wish to, or just drop a message in the chat box. But if lack of funds to launch a business, then you have to, is an area of concern for you, which I'm guessing it is, because it's a very specific concern that you've listed there, is that there are ways. How can we address this? Let's just kind of think about how can we address this. Well, there are many ways to fund business activities. There's crowdfunding, crowdsourcing. There's even 10 years ago, there was only a few ways to raise finance for the likes of you and I. For the likes of Warren Buffett, they can raise capital in many, many different ways. There are choices available at that end of the spectrum, but now choices are much easier. So your influence may not be the originators of those funds. It might be someone like a broker who's connected to those funds. So there's be somewhere in that circle of influence. And if you're on LinkedIn, Carla, then you can access those people on LinkedIn. And if you'd rather have, I'll put my details up at the end, if that's a conversation that you want to take further, sort of, privately, so to speak, then there are ways to influence that. It just takes a little bit more thinking about, but it's a really good one. I'm glad you mentioned that. And if it is an area of concern that you want to act on, then, and that's the other thing, do you want to act on it or not? Then by all means, let us know, and we will put you in touch with someone via the incubator or wherever. I'm absolutely certain they've got those contacts. Okay, circle of influence. Would anyone like to say anything else about the circle of influence? Have I covered enough on that, Janine? Is there anything that you want to add or not?
No, I think I'm good. I noticed that Carla's unmuted. Did you want to jump in, Carla? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Oh no, it's okay. Yeah. So I was just gonna say that, yeah, I feel like I'm in a bit of a in between, because I'm trying to figure out ways of launching my business on like a very small budget, so not launching it large scale, but to get enough traction to be able to get funding from other sources such as crowdfunding or investors. So I feel like I need to get some traction going before I would be able to get in some kind of investment or finance to launch it properly, if that makes sense. So it's it feels a little bit like limbo, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it can be frustrating, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you for your candor. So yeah, sometimes and every situation is different. You'd be surprised if I didn't say that, but every situation is different, and sometimes you've got to be really, it's only in times of necessity that creativity and innovation comes about. So we just might have to think about what you're doing, Carla, to influence people to invest in your idea or not. And we may have to get the idea to a stage where it's generating some cash. You've proven the model and the demand, and then funds will come your way.
Yeah.
Or not, but that's certainly a conversation I feel sure we'd be happy to take offline and speak to you about, and try and develop some ideas there for you. Thank you very much for that. Is there anyone else that wants to say something, or shall I press on? I'm going to press on if that's okay.
I think you're okay. Good to go.
Thank you very much. Okay, so what do we get to control? Here we go. Right, so serenity prayer, which is basically saying, help me accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. My goodness me, I could have, if there's one thing to pray for, that would be that would be pretty near top of the list for me. The wisdom to know the difference, what you can
It's
control.
the bottom one, isn't it?
I really like that. Okay, right. Now, Captain Jack Sparrow, who you may not think is a great philosopher, but came up with a fantastic piece of advice many times, actually, in his movies. You probably recognize this. The problem is not the problem, and I'm not going to do an impression, but the problem is your attitude about the problem. Do you understand? And he's right on the money. It's how we think about that problem that is the key to whether that problem really holds us back, or whether that problem really compels us to act. And it forces us to really think about, is this really a problem I want to get stuck on? Do I really care enough about this or not? And that's a really healthy thought process to go through. Am I going to have to get over myself, or whatever it is? So we just talked about COVID, so I've kind of stolen that already because at the time seemed to be right. But in the end, the exciting thing about all of this is that that bit that we can control, which is how we respond to the events around us. And this is where children learn so much from their parents. So now I got 4, which is why I look like this. So and if ever you've and even if you've got nieces and nephews or young children, when you've had young children, particularly toddlers who are always falling over, they will fall over and sort of shock themselves, and they won't actually react until they see mums or dads or guardians reaction. And if the parents are going like that in horror, that informs the toddler of how they should respond. In horror, and they start crying. So again, you might think that's a ridiculous example, but it's very real, and early childhood stuff informs. I mentioned much earlier about 4 years, our characters are pretty much formed by the time we're even 4 years old. It's really, really important. And sometimes that means we've got to unlearn stuff. I'm getting off onto another subject now, so I'll come back in, but sometimes we have to unlearn stuff because actually, our parents don't know everything. They know more than us at certain stages of our lives, but they don't know everything. And I'm having to unlearn stuff, not because of my parents, but because of my own deeply held beliefs, which I've had to change my attitude to over time. I'm not going to talk about Brexit. Oh my goodness, there it is. But I'm not going to talk about it. So we're not going to go there, because there's not enough time or will in the end. Okay, so influence. I'm gonna speed on, because there is. I want to make sure we've got. Okay, right. This is important. Okay, so when we're trying to influence, let's get in the middle, that middle circle that we talked about. Okay, so the stuff we've got 100% control of, that's us and everything that's going on around us. The stuff we've got zero control of, that's out there. We've just got to be aware of it. COVID, Brexit, whatever it happens to be, we've got zero control over. And then there's stuff that's going on in the middle that actually we can exert a little bit of control with a C, which is actually another word for that, is influence. We can influence outcomes. Now, one word. Anyone like to hazard a guess as what's the most important ingredient for influence to come about? What word comes to mind when you look at this image?
Trust.
Thank you. Yeah, both perfectly valid. Yeah, trust.
Great photo.
Yeah. It's I love that. It is trust. Absolutely right. Well done. And confidence that dad's a good catch, because you can trust your dad, and you're right to trust your dad. You should be able to trust your dad or guardian, and have confidence in all those things. But trust is the most important thing. Unless trust, let's say Janine and I are having a grown-up debate / argument about some subject. I could argue that black is black, but Janine wants to argue it's white. Unless there's trust between us, we're never going to get to a settled outcome. There has to be trust. So the question arises, how do you build trust? And in the Facebook vocabulary, it's complicated. How do you engender trust in people? But unless you do engender trust, you're not going to have an awful lot of influence in the world. People have to trust you. Okay, so it is a mindset. A lot of it is about negotiation. We've heard a lot about that on Brexit. It's a negotiation. The whole thing about influence suggests that you're in one position, someone else is in another position, and you've got to try and meet. Now, whether you meet perfectly in the middle, or whether you meet more over this side than over that side, that will depend on your ability to influence and bring them closer to you, or they will draw you closer to them. That's a bit of an abstract example. I'm going to show you a proper one in just a second. We've got about, by the way, Janine, about 20 minutes left. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that what you're expecting? Okay. So if everyone goes to the chat box again, negotiating. Now, I have to say there are some cultures around the world where the British culture is probably one of them, where we're a bit uncomfortable. So talking about money, because some people think it's vulgar, and also the process of negotiating, because that's vulgar too. I've had to overcome that sort of perception as well, because you wouldn't last very long in sales if you're no good at negotiating. But actually, we're all of us negotiating all the time, whether we realize it or not. So, does anyone want to put in the chat box or come off of mute how they feel about negotiating? I'm going to move on, but if there's an answer that comes in, we'll go to it. Okay, so is it? Oh,
sorry,
Maria, thank you.
Hello. I actually I really relate to the point you made about, you know, negotiating, particularly talking about money. So as a self-employed person, I've been doing, over the last year, I've not been doing as much singing, obviously, because, you know, not very many concerts, if any, you know, gigs or anything, or operas. So I've been doing a lot more teaching. And over the last month, actually, I've had 2 instances where I didn't receive a transfer. So I didn't receive a payment from a parent. And I just, yeah, what you said really resonated with me, because even though I was in a position where I'd performed so I'd given them the service and they'd consumed the service, and I hadn't received payment, but for some reason I felt like I couldn't mention the fact that I hadn't been paid. And oh my gosh, I thought about this for such a long time. How do I put this into a message? Basically asking somebody, please, could you transfer the money? But I couldn't. Do you have any advice on that, by the way? Because I do really, really struggle with that.
Okay, well, that's putting me on the spot.
Sorry.
Actually, I do. And it works for me. Is Jasmine, thank you again for your Jasmine and Maria, both for your candor there. Maria, on your point there, if I send them a text message, because most of the time you don't get paid, it's because they've forgotten, because people have a million.
Yes.
There's a small percentage of the time where there's something a little bit flaky, shall we say, going on. Managing cash flow, whatever it happens to be. But anyway, let's assume the spirit of this is that they've forgotten. I'd send them a text message, and it would say something like, Maria, gentle reminder to transfer the money, please. And I'd send a very gentle, very clear, but a gently worded text, because I'm sure upwards of 9 times out of 10, it's going to be, they just haven't got around to it yet. They've forgotten. Yeah. So the important word is gentle reminder. And that means you're not demanding with menace. You are gentle reminder. So
thank you.
You are welcome to see it. It was worth turning up already. There you go, Maria. Thank you very much. I'm just shamelessly gonna promote myself, by the way. This is something I think I'm quite good at, and I teach lots of. So if there's something that the incubator would be interested on negotiation, there's a massive subject, and it's a subset of influence, then I'll be able to do something on that. So
it's something we could probably all benefit from, because I know it's something I volunteer with Rainbows, and the Rainbows pay a weekly kind of membership fee, but it's paid online termly. Yeah. And the number of times when people haven't, when you check your bank accounts and people haven't paid, and then it's like, how do I ask them? Because, and not like you say, 9 times out of 10, you drop the text, it's like, have you forgotten to transfer it? And they come back and they're so apologetic. Yeah. But it still doesn't make me feel any better the next term when I have to do it again. Okay. So ways to overcome that uncomfortable, embarrassing feeling that comes with negotiation would be, I'd definitely benefit from it.
Okay, well, first of all, you can, and when I get hired to do projects, I take 50% of the money up front, because often I have to go to considerable amount of time, which may not be a direct cost, but an investment of time to create a presentation like this, for example, as a case in point. So I take a percentage up front, which de-risks the venture. Now, if you're talking about a singing lesson, you may not be able to do that, but you can set the expectation that that you'll get. I don't know if you invoice, Maria, or whether you it's all done by email and a bank transfer or whatever it happens to be, but then the expectation is that payment is due on invoice or something like that. Then you're setting a clear expectation, and because you don't want the hassle or embarrassment or discomfort of having to ask for the money. It's a hassle, it's an overhead that takes your time and energy. Okay, right, I'm getting off on one now. Anyway, so but thank you. It's something I feel. By the way, Tony Robinson, if anyone knows that name, Tony Robinson, who used to be Baldrick in Blackadder and many other things, does lots of stuff on the TV as well. He is a big proponent of an initiative called Pay in 30 Days, and it's a campaign really up against big corporations who and one went bust a couple of years ago, who had an open strategy of not paying small businesses for something like 90 or 120 days. And often, but a large percentage of the time, those businesses had gone under because they'd not got cash from that particular customer, or maybe even another, and that's part of their strategy. They could save money by their supply chain going bankrupt, which is unethical and immoral, and they deserve to go under for themselves, and they did. Anyway, I'm just gonna calm down now, because I can control that. Okay, so embarrassing or uncomfortable. Apart from the money thing, Maria, let's take that off the table. But when you're in a negotiation, and that's what the other side is hoping. They're hoping that you're uncomfortable and embarrassed and fidgety and all of that, because the chances are you won't negotiate, or that you'll cave in to their demand for a reduced price. And in negotiation training, mindset is everything. It's a game. It is absolutely a game. We'll come on to that a little bit later on, but that's what the other side is hoping for. There we go, already done that. Right, we're not going to do that. Right, here's another thing. Here's a surprising thing about influencing. Now, Gordon is he's a day older than God, and he's got this fantastic, beautiful house in Hemel, on the outskirts of Hemel Hempstead, and in his sitting room, one of the many sitting rooms in the home, is this beautiful piece of yew furniture, which is a beautiful shade of almost like orange wood, if anyone knows that wood. I don't often use the word magnificent, but it is magnificent. This great big sort of piece of furniture, like a display cabinet in the middle of the room. And I remarked when round there one day, wow, that's fantastic. And do you know what he said? He said, we got an amazing deal from Harrods, where they bought their furniture. Now, of all the stores that you could go into and think that you could negotiate on the price, Harrods would probably not be in the top 10.
It wouldn't make the list at all, I don't think.
I was going to say Harrods, I would not dream of going to Harrods and say, can I pay less for this?
But he got something like 15% discount. And so the point is, Harrods were never going to offer you a discount off their own back. Only by asking do you get. Now, this goes back to early childhood again, and I'm not dissing parents here, please understand that. I'm just reinforcing some of our deeply held beliefs. Maybe you know, maybe it changes over time. Maybe that's the thing. So, you know, I don't know. I got told, don't ask for another ice cream. God, I wish I'd listened to that.
Rude to ask.
But, but you can relate to that. And those early childhood influences come out to play in our professional lives later on. So don't ask for a discount. Don't ask for more money. Don't ask for that invoice to be paid. You know, don't ask. You've got to ask.
And it's turning it round from it's rude to ask or don't ask for another one into you don't get if you don't ask. If you don't ask the question, you don't know the answer, do you?
So my point to sort of counteract, what's the mindset required to counteract that is you have a right. In fact, I think you have a responsibility as a business owner, as you know, assuming it's your cash that you're spending, you've earned that. Somehow you have earned that money. You have a right to get the best value for money. You have a responsibility to get the best value for money. And therefore you have a right to test the price, whether it be from Harrods, be it the corner store, be it whatever. I'm not suggesting you go in and try negotiating for your petrol or fuel or whenever you go in. Although I'd be interested to know if you get anywhere with that. But for what we'd call a highly considered purchase, like that bit of used furniture, like buying a car, like whatever it happens to be, you have a responsibility to really test that price. How much do they really want to sell that car for 25,000, or will they take 18 for it or something like that? You have a right. Anyway, let's move on. There you go. Yeah, auction money. So okay, right. I'm gonna. Okay, right. This is now you can Google this. This is the meridian diagram. So let's just take this discussion that we're having, and I'm so pleased that everyone's coming in with chats and off of mute, and I'm really thankful that you're all doing that. But the words we're talking, here's the breakdown. Let's say the presentation itself is 100%. You can see that smallest sliver of which no one would ever serve me, a Victoria sponge cake. You can only see that 7% is just the words that I've been speaking. 93% of what we call the non-verbal influences. That's my body language. Well, okay, you can only see my head. Maybe you're getting an effect from my eyes as I look at you here or look into the camera. You're over here somewhere, but I'm looking into the camera to get to land my points here. So, you know, body language in the red there is 55%, but the tone of my voice. So I can lower my tone to emphasize a point, or I can raise my tone here because I'm about to ask a question, aren't I? And that's raising my voice. So the vocal tone. So influence is not just about bashing someone over the head. It's much more subtle, much more sophisticated than that. And I'm not doing this anywhere near the justice it deserves. But Marie, if you take one thing away from today, it will be this. And Maria, you use your voice to influence people all the time. It's probably a much higher percentage than that for Maria, given Maria's profession. Your voice is everything. But anyway, that's the point. It's not just the words, it's the way you say them, the frequency, the intensity that you deliver them with, your body language that you're using, open. Anyway, loads to it. But that's a really important thing. I'm not going to go into that. I really want to come into, for the last few minutes, is this right here. So I'm going to play. I hope you'll sort of recognize this. It's the scene itself is only a minute long. I'm hoping that you can hear it. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear this.
Yeah. Mm. No.
Good morning, Mr. Kimber. Rescued from the labellers. Return to you with a request for a fair hearing. Your own protection is failing, Mr. Kimber. Your boys are taking cuts. I want to suggest that from now on, you contract out your racetrack security for the Peaky Blinders. You'll be saving you a lot of money, Mr. Kimber. a lot of money. In return, you give us 5% of the take, and 3 legal betting pitches at every race meeting north of the River Severn. Rising to 6 after 1 year if we are all satisfied with the service. What do you say, Mr. Kimber?
I say talk business to my accountant. Oh, I don't.
There we go. Right. Did everyone sort of hear that properly? You saw what was going on and heard what was going on? Okay, brilliant. So now that is a scene, obviously from Peaky Blinders, that most people will watch and they'll be entertained by it, and it's a great scene. But actually, you could do a PhD on that scene, on that one scene alone, with all the skills that we're going. I've looked at this from a sales standpoint and a life skills standpoint, and I think it's a great example of communication. And I'm going to play it back in chunks now, just for a few minutes, and tell you why I think it works. But I would welcome anyone else coming in with any thoughts that they may have on this. So I'm going to play the first bit here.
Good morning.
Right, so so nothing's even been said yet. Nothing's even been said, but the body language, the non-verbal clues. Tommy Shelby, that main character that's standing up right now, has got Billy Kimber's full attention. It's called a pattern interrupt. So I don't know if you've ever done, Janine, a telephone cold call, phone someone up that you've never spoken to before. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay, right. Now that person, the other end of the phone, wasn't just waiting for your call. They were in the middle of doing something else. And this is all about influence. You've got to find a way to interrupt them, to get them to stop on that spreadsheet or whatever else they're doing and get their attention. And there is a way to do that. Now, you're not going to just walk into a meeting room with...
That's much more effective than the telephone call.
You're not just going to walk. This is artistic license, but you're not just going to walk in with a sort of a sack full of cash and dump it on the table. But if you're in sales or if you're influencing, you may metaphorically be doing that. You may have an idea, like was it Jasmine or Carla talking about funding for a business? You may sorry.
It was Carla.
Carla, thank you. You may metaphorically have a sack full of cash, which is the return on investment someone's going to get by investing in your idea. So that it's not beyond the realms of possibility, but that's what's happened. That's a pattern interrupt, it's called, and they've got their attention. Let's have a look and see what happens next.
Mr. Kimber, rescue from the labourers, and return to you with a request for a fair hearing.
Okay, right. So if you've got those words, here's, I'm not just giving you this money for nothing, I'm going to walk away. He's introduced the concept of conditionality. If, did you hear the word if going on there, or in return for? So I've rescued from the Lee brothers, which is a vendor to Billy Kimber's operation, a supplier, if you like. They've been stealing money. I am guessing Billy Kimber has a particular way of dealing with that, if he ever found out. But anyway, so Tommy Shelby's coming along. Look, I've done you this massive favor, but in return, I want some time with you. I want you to give my idea some serious consideration. So this is influence being brought to bear. Let's have a listen and see what happens next.
Your own protection is failing, Mr. Kimber. You're always taking cuts. Okay,
right. So he's told Billy Kimber, the gangster, something about his business that Billy Kimber doesn't know. So he's told him something he doesn't know. He's brought some fresh information. Again, think about, where do you get your news feeds from? Are they credible? Are they influencing you? And is it right for them to influence you? So I'm posing that question. So, but Tommy Shelby, the main character here, has done some analysis, some research, found out that this theft has been going on, brings it to the attention. And my guess is Tommy Shelby has a reason for doing all this, and we're about to find out what that reason is, because he's not doing it because he's a nice bloke. He's doing it because he's got an agenda, and most people have an agenda. Here we go.
I want to suggest that from now on, you contract out to racetrack security for the Peaky Blinders. Okay,
so here's the idea that Tommy Shelby wants Billy Kimber to act on. This is why he's trying to influence an outcome. I'm going to suggest you contract out your racetrack security to the Peaky Blinders. So don't give your business to the Lee brothers, give it to the Peaky Blinders, because we're honest. And we'll look after you, Mr. Kimber. We won't steal your money. That's basically what he's saying. Okay, what happens next?
We'll be serving you a lot of money, Mr. Kimber. A lot of money.
Okay, so why is it worth Billy Kimber outsourcing his racetrack security to the Peaky Blinders? The answer is, it will be saving you a lot of money, Mr. Kimber, a lot of money. That's why the idea is worth buying. So he's floated an idea and he's justified why it's worth doing. He's using his skills, his body language. He's not shouting. It's a very reasoned approach. He's got the attention and he's not squandering it. While he's got the attention, he's making a very clear, reasoned argument as to why it's a sensible decision for Billy Kimber to give the racetrack security business to Tommy Shelby. Okay, so what happens next?
In return, you give us 5% of the take and 3 legal betting pitches at every race meeting north of the River Severn.
Okay, so in return, do you notice that? So you know, I'm doing you this massive favor, but in return, you're going to outsource your racetrack security for 5%. So that's the cost, how much it's going to cost Billy Kimber. Is going to cost him 5% of the turnover for three. So he's not asking for all of the business that Billy Kimber could offer, because that might be too big of an ask. He's just asking for a little bit for 3 racetracks for the first 12 months. Okay, so anyway, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but let's have a look and we'll see what happens next.
After 1 year, if we're all satisfied with the service.
Okay, so instantly doubling the value of that contract in the second year. So we're going to get into business. We're going to see if it works. Carla, with your business idea, you were talking about investors. Maybe you're not at the time with your business idea to get that investment. Maybe you've got to prove it works, like Billy Kimber and Tommy Shelby here. Prove it works. If it works and we're both in agreement, then we're going to raise it to 6 racetracks the following year, year 2, double the value of the agreement. Okay, what happens next? Okay, so in sales, we would call that a soft close. Okay, so he hasn't said, will you give me all your money right now, Mr. Kimber? Will you give me that deal right now? Because the only answer to that is almost certainly no. He's asked what we call an open question, a soft close. What do you say, Mr. Kimber? What do you think? So he's dipping his toe in the water to see what Billy Kimber really thinks. And let's see what happens next. Right, hang on. What happens next? Nothing. Silence. Now, has anyone been in a meeting or even in a restaurant, actually, back in the days when they were open, and all of a sudden, it does happen, it all goes silent. And you think, oh my goodness, the power's gone, or everyone looks around, oh my goodness, it's silent. This is scary, what's happening? If you're in a business meeting and you're negotiating and you ask that question, what do you think, Mr. Kimber? And some silence ensues. That is only 3 or 4 seconds in this sketch. It feels, if you're on the receiving end of that, it can feel really scary, because in your mind, you may not be looking around, but in your mind, you're thinking, oh my goodness, what should be happening? Someone should be talking, surely. Silence can be absolutely terrifying unless you know what you're doing. And Tommy Shelby is very carefully using silence to his great advantage here by asking the question and then shutting up, to let the message land in Billy Kimber's mind, let him process it. Well, what do I think about that offer? And allow that thought to ferment, to for him to process it, to digest it. And so what may be terrifying to Billy Kimber is actually empowering to Tommy Shelby. And I encourage you all, and you, to practice this and get comfortable with silence, because it's, I think, of all the apart from listening, for all the communication tools that you could ever have at your disposal, silence for me is the most powerful and the most transformative. If you can learn how to use it skillfully, it's incredibly powerful. Okay, right, lecture over. Let me just, once, let's see what happens next. Oh, you know what? Anyway, so the next thing that, but I'm not going to rewind that, but next thing that Billy Kimber says after the, to break the silence is, I say you talk numbers with my accountant, I'm going for a dance. Okay, now the point is, it's not a no. It's not a no, I reject your offer. It's talk the numbers through with my accountant, which is a yes if the numbers stack up. And for Carla, when you're asking for investment, they're almost certainly going to say something similar to that. Speak to our accountant, speak to our finance people. We'll see if the numbers work, see if they stack up. Anyway, I've unpacked that. We're coming up on a couple of minutes over. I apologize about that.
Don't worry, it's fine.
Okay, right, thank you for that. I'm going to come off of share now, so we can all see each other in glorious full screen. So I'm just going to ask you in the chat box, what one thing has stood out for you in influence now? What are you thinking? Is there anything that's really resonated with you over the last hour and a half that we've been talking about this? Is there anything that you're going to try out for yourself to influence others to your way of thinking? What's your takeaways? Or does anyone want to, even better, does anyone want to come off of mute, and or does anyone have any questions, or just give me some feedback if you would.
I'll jump in. So I really like the Thomas Shelby and the Billy Kimber thing. So it would be great if I had the confidence to walk into an investment meeting with like a bag of cash and put it on the table and say, right, this is what you're going to make in 3 years. If you invest in me, maybe I can work my way up to that. But it's definitely got me thinking about different ways of pitching and, you know, grabbing that attention straight away, and even getting it to be like as a thought process. So not like a straight no, but at least actually we're interested, but we want to just check your numbers. So that's definitely got me thinking there.
Okay, nice one, Carla. Thank you for that. And you're right, you're not going to walk in with a bag full of cash and people would raise eyebrows and wonder where it all came from, and all of that. And it may not look credible in real life, so to speak, but the metaphor is still true. Excuse me. Janine, just in the process of winding up now. Anything you'd like to add?
No, don't put me on the spot. That's not.
Oh,
fair.
sorry. Okay.
It's supposed to be me that puts you on the spot.
Okay.
I find it fascinating, and it is a lot of things to take away, to think about that I've not really thought about before. I mean, you're aware of the word influence, but then you don't really think about it in a bigger picture and how it affects. And in my role, even though I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm not setting up a business, it is still very what's the word I need? It is it's certainly useful, and it's a good tool set to have to support other people with. But yeah, actually, and while we've been going through this, I've been thinking about, where do I get my news feed from? And I do actually, although I avoid the 10 o'clock news and Good Morning Britain and all of those sort of things, my radio alarm goes off first thing, and there's a 30-minute news update. When I log into my personal laptop, it hits an MSN landing page which has got all sorts of snippets of news on, and it's silly things like that now I'm like, oh yeah, maybe things are influencing me. And from a sales and marketing perspective, you can see how you could possibly put things into practice that influence without being in your face with influencing, if that makes sense.
Well, no, it absolutely makes sense. And I think sales has changed so much from when I first got involved in the 1980s to what it is now, because
the days of cold calling. I used to work in insurance many years ago, and that whole setting up appointment for financial consultants to do the full review, to look at your pay, and it's that first engagement. If you don't get them with you on a telephone call, if you don't get them within the first 3 seconds, you're then into all of your handling objections training, which I'm really not very good at. I'm very much okay then, I might phone you in another few. As opposed to then opening up a conversation to turn them around.
I understand, but there are ways and means, and buyers these days are much more sophisticated and educated than they were 30-40 years ago when I first started out. Okay, so last share then, I just wanted to give you what I think are my sort of takeaways, if you like. You're probably wondering why there's a pair of shoes on display there. First of all, I believe we're all influencers if we choose to be. I would ask, pick your battles, argue or reason rather than argue with something that's worth winning. Just think about what you're investing your time and energy into. But always try to see things from the other person's point of view. If they say no, it may not mean no forever. It may mean, ask them why it's no. Try to walk in there. The other person's moccasins, as the old Indian saying, kind of goes, that's why there's a pair of shoes on there. Take those, try and see things from their point of view. That doesn't mean you've got to agree with them. It means you've got to understand why they're holding those particular views or beliefs, and then try and unpack them. Again, influencing. Learn to negotiate, which we've been talking about. Remain calm and reason, because the moment you lose your calm and you become, and I was a teenager once, I know exactly what it feels like to just explode and argue and shout and all of those things. And frankly, because I didn't have any other intellect or reasoning capacity left, so the only thing I had to resort to was shouting. And become a great communicator. Great communicators are great influencers by definition. So I encourage you to learn more about this. Probably the most influential book I ever came across on this was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It must be 100 years old or thereabouts, but it's just as
close, hasn't it? He's a great book.
It's just as relevant now as it was when it was first written, and it's an easy read. So for a simple soul like me, that would be it. If anyone else has any questions, oh, Maria, sorry.
But what's the title again? How to Win Friends.
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, I like that. How to Win Friends.
And influence people. Yeah, it's a great read.
I'll definitely, I'll look that up. Also, I want to just say I really enjoyed the bit about negotiation, because I recently listened to a podcast about, well, actually it was about something else, but they mentioned negotiation and how they were actually talking about empowering women to be able to walk into a negotiation and feel like they can ask for what they want. But actually they mentioned something that I found really interesting, which is, I think this probably applies to everybody, not just women. We tend to, before we even go into that negotiation, we tend to settle with ourselves first. So basically what that means, like imagine if you want to go in and ask for a pay rise of 10%, and then you immediately think, no, I'm not going to get that. So how about I'm going to go in and ask for 7%. So what you end up getting is probably 5%. But what they talked about on the podcast is don't settle with yourself first. So we have that negotiation with ourselves first, because we think what I want, I'm probably not going to get. And I found that really fascinating. And because you talked about it today, about, you know, confidence, about knowing, you know, in that scene in Peaky Blinders, knowing what you want and knowing what you want to achieve in a particular negotiation. And I don't know if that makes sense at all.
No, it absolutely makes sense, Maria. Really good shout. I've not heard that particular podcast, but when I work with my clients, I kind of teach them that when they go to meetings, everyone talks about you should write down your objective for that meeting, and that's sound advice. But actually, I go one step further. I say there should be two, it's like a ceiling and a floor, and you want a range of outcomes between. So there's a best possible result from that meeting, and then there's a minimum acceptable result from that meeting. So in your example, Maria, that you just used about the pay negotiation, and there's a lot of psychology to the way men approach this as opposed to women, which is a big subject, and maybe for another time. You can read lots on gender pay gap. That is absolutely for sure. But if you go in, my best possible result, as you said, Maria, was 10%. My minimum acceptable result is, say, 5%. Now, knowing that your best possible result is 10%, maybe you should be going in and asking for 12, knowing that you're going to have to concede somewhere. So that's
interesting. Yeah, because I thought that perhaps I should go in and ask for my best, you know, maximum that I'm hoping for, rather than actually exceeding that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Really good question, though, and I'm really glad you asked it. Is there anyone else that would like to ask anything? Even if we end this call momentarily and you think, oh my goodness, I wish I'd have asked this question, by all means, get a message to Janine, or you can email me directly if you wish to keith@salesmarvel.co.uk. I'm happy to record a sort of follow-up video with any of those questions on, and give you some sort of response which you can accept or not. But I've really enjoyed, and I know it's taken courage on all of your parts to come off mute and engage, and some of you have even been walking and talking at the same time, so something I've not managed for a long time. So thank you for that, and for your chat box, and Janine for seeing this all the way through as well, and for the opportunity to come and talk to your incubator constituents, if you like.
No problem. I've really enjoyed it, and it's the first time I've done a workshop with my camera on all the way through.
Oh well, I'm honoured.
I'm here for I'm all the way through all the time, but I'm normally kind of in the background, so it's quite really enjoyed actually engaging in it and joining in with the conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Jasmine, for your kind.
Same as the cat.
Brilliant. I'll end this and I'll send you a link to the recording, Janine, a bit later on when it's all processed and what have you. Thanks again. Please pass on my best wishes to Rich, and we'll speak to each other very soon. And happy long weekend, Easter, particularly to our feline friends as well. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Brilliant. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you, Janine.
No problem, Maria.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye now. Thanks, Janine. Bye-bye.